topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the host and their guests, and not those of W4CS Radio, its employees, or affiliates. W4CS makes no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening to the Cancer Support Network on W4CS.com.
Howdy, howdy. So, how are you doing?
You look like...
Tell me how I look.
Okay, so you look like you could be at the Supreme Court right now as one of our...
I feel like this because internally, you've got me thinking about this whole thing, right? That, granted, have gone through the whole thought processes before, right? But at the same time, I even have to admit, right? So I had a girlfriend come over, right? Getting older, right? Getting a little bit of wrinkles, getting a little bit of, okay, right? So it's like, oh, collagen. Mm-hmm. So they got this thing called the elixir, right? And you get these little bottles and you're drinking them and you're drinking them, right? And so like today I decide, you know what? Elixir. Mm-hmm. Let me look up the definition. Let me tell you, when it started off with magical, mm-hmm. I said, I got taken. I'm done. Okay. I got taken right there. Right. But then it did talk about, cures and things like that. So I kind of was uplifted in that moment. But it definitely started off, and it was the Oxford Dictionary. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. That was definitely one of those dictionaries where I was like, okay, they're telling the truth. The magical or medicine potion. Potion.
Yeah. Actually, and when you do think of elixirs, you do think of like, I mean, it is kind of like this thing that makes you fly, right?
Right, exactly. It is some kind of like, because why I've been watching too much Disney Channel is what the real problem is. You know this. You felt my energy before, right? But then I did go on to see, right, that there's a substance held to be capable of changing metals into gold. That was sold me. That sold me.
Oh my goodness.
Magical. I'm just saying. So I'm just talking about the things that we kind of just grab onto. Probably look at the definitions of the terms that are being flown around, because you might not always spend your money.
That's true.
So I'm going to do, so the thing about it, so now I got them. I'm going to make sure that I try them out. I have to admit, I'm not good at regimens, right? So if I get full and all like looking all young, or like 3 months from now, it might just all fall down. Just saying.
Okay. What does it have to do with you looking like a lawyer? I mean, a magistrate. Sorry.
It has to do with the fact that I am in this mode of not like totally comfortable right now.
Comfortable with what?
The topic at hand.
Okay.
I know, and I should be.
Okay.
And it's not my
willingness, because this is that uncomfortability. So you all, let me express to you that Daria and I have not had a pre-discussion about this topic. Sometimes not proper English, whatever it is. but she and I sometimes discuss what maybe some contents of the show, and some days like this one is not even discussed. I literally text Daria about a topic because here's what happened to me this week.
It hit me.
Yeah, I'm literally questioning, like, when you have aging, like you were saying, folks around you, and then they make comments about like how they feel like, their time is precious, is limited, right?
Right.
I had this like I had this overwhelming feeling when I heard that. I was like questioning my own mortality. And not that, listen, you, Daria, I know that everybody has their own lifeline, but I have done things after my mom passed. Like I would take the average of my dad, who's 41, and then I take the average of my mom, 64, divided by 2, and come up with my own. Like I've done some crazy, obnoxious stuff. Okay.
Right. Right.
Um, why I share this is because sometimes our age does have a lot to do with our genetics. And so I was going through a little bit of analysis, like, why am I so crazy right now, putting myself into things everywhere, right? Not voluntolding myself. And then I was like, wait a minute, maybe this is about me feeling sometimes that I don't know how much time there really is, even though I'm coming upon another birthday in a few months. Maybe there's a little bit of, how you and I talked about the monthly grief cycle. I think also when it comes to birthday analysis, around 2 to 3 months, sometimes I think people who are thinkers will start to get in that mode, right?
Yep.
Even party planners, right? You start to think 2 to 3. So, Dari, that's kind of where that came up for everyone. I was like questioning my mortality, and what I mean by that is like I don't know how much time I have, and this is maybe my underlying unconscious, conscious saying, just put yourself in everything you couldn't imagine because you can. And then I thought of you because for you, and you're going to share, I can imagine your journey, because when you do have an illness that you don't know, like you do live each day, and then you do crazy shit, like put yourself into 10,000 things. And I think
Yeah.
that's what I'm getting to. And then
Totally.
on top of that, if you notice, the title has a question mark. I don't even know if that was done on purpose, like looking at my mortality question mark, because we are actually every day of our lives since COVID, we've been doing it in some capacity, but now, like, I think many of us who are in our 40s, 50s, and 60s probably do it a little bit more overdressed, 70s, 80s, whatever, 90s. And that's where this comes from, is the analysis of, yes, seniors always look at their mortality, but at the same time, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds are developing a plan too of how do they want to live.
Right. I totally with you. I am totally with you. I think the thing about it is it runs through my mind on a daily. You know what I mean? Whether it's mine, whether it's my family members, additionally, obviously the families I've served, and how whether they're coming to me in a pre-need position, or additionally whether they've just been diagnosed and they're finding out about, how they're going to live on, basically with this reality that the inevitable is there, which it's there for all, right? It's just we don't look at it, right, until we're kind of smacked in the face with it. And I think it's not that I like the topic, right? But I do have a stance and a position on the topic. But I feel like it's also a person's journey, that kind of can guide it. But if you're not taking the time to pause, right, and really get focused around just what we're talking about, it does become this lingering thing as you're aging and getting older that, oh my God, I didn't either get my affairs in order, or additionally, I didn't figure out how I wanted to share my life with this next generation, or think about it how honestly I could live on, right, through my legacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not looking at it necessarily like it's the monetary aspect of it, right? What's the values that you could pass down, right? What is what's the next generation need that through even your obituary could be displayed, right? I think in the latter stages, it's a little bit harder to kind of be doing things. But when you're, in those 40s, 50s, 60s, if you can embrace this reality that there is an end, right? There's that alpha, omega, right? And that basically what you're looking to do is figure out how to embrace that end and then figure out how you want to be represented at the end, right? If I thought to myself, what will my funeral be like, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would they say about me? What songs would I want my children to hear? What aspects of my life, and I feel good, bad, and indifferent, right, of my life would people benefit from knowing? A lot of my responsibility, or what I feel my responsibility is in that moment of trying to help somebody through the latter stage of figuring this out, or even on the other end of it when the person is passed and figuring out, well, how do we make a celebration of life, right? And every one of my programs have and legacy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because there's the life that's represented. But if we're really talking about the funeral, right, being for the living, then we are talking about really figuring out how this life connects to the word, right, in tandem with additionally passing a baton.
Yeah.
Like, who's going to basically, start making the apple pie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to continue to connect the family for the holiday events? Who's going to make sure that people ain't fighting? Who's going to be embracing? Who's going to love? Who's going to be that one that, even in their neighborhood, right, was the woman that really, felt like, or made our neighborhood a family, and giving her recognition. I mean, I think there's just so much that if we could embrace it, right, that we could do for the generations right now. I feel like a lot of what we need is love, right? But it's that love comes with forethought, right? It comes with an intention. And I feel like that's what we're kind of missing, is this aspect of being intentional about what our life represents. What's the purpose in the first place, right? Like, what were you supposed to do given the life you were given for the dash, right? What's in there? But why? Like, why were you given the gift of life in the first place? Like, how many don't make it through the womb?
Mm-hmm.
Like, in figuring out how not, and then the representation of even how that in itself, right? That life does not die in vain if you, right, can find ways to better. And that's hard because there's no reason for it. Bottom line, we're not talking about a reason. We're talking about finding a silver lining. And that's not easy.
No.
And so basically, when we're talking about facing it, there's not also an ability to categorize death. Like, we're not born to not categorize. Like we literally are born, we start looking at things. Oh, that's this shape, that's that shape, and we start to say, oh, okay. And that's how we connected to being a shape in the first place, right? But at the end of the day, when we're talking about death, there's no other thing to compare it to.
It's so true.
So for us to really be able to say, like, okay, I'm going to be able to figure this out. That's why when there's a passing, the busy bee is the busy bee, right? Because they don't want to face that either. I think there's a lot of kind of trying to look at it earlier in life, right? That would be beneficial. It would be beneficial. Because I feel like you would take life more significantly, right? Like, we don't always have to look at death and like right smack in our face, somebody passes and we're looking at the news, and then we focus on the reality of like, oh, how precious life is. But why are you not thinking about that just when you wake up in the morning in general? Don't turn on the news yet.
And maybe, Daria, that's one of the reasons why, I mean, and I'm speaking for you and I wouldn't usually do that, but maybe that's one commonality I share. Granted, I don't have a chronic illness or condition, but sometimes I just feel in my aching soul the last week that I don't have it. I don't have a long lifespan. I don't know why I feel it, but I just, I can't explain it. And it's not a bad thing.
No.
It's just, and I'm telling you intuitively, I can feel it. And it came this week. And I'm saying this where there's a guilt placement on myself thinking, well, I don't have a chronic illness. Why am I feeling this way? Or why? But it is what it is. It's not a bad thing, but it's helping to drive and make sense of why we do the things we do. So
right.
I am categorizing you in a way that we're very possibly, but sometimes we do look at why some people are driven towards, I don't call it distraction because they're all meaningful, purposeful things that we're choosing in our life,
I think you're totally, I get exactly what you're saying, because I feel like with a chronic illness, right? You're in this situation where there's like this unknown in life that comes before the biggest unknown, right? So you don't know how it's going to take you, where it's going to take you. So it becomes like a mental, right? And so you're trying to figure out how you can navigate through life and be upbeat about it, right? Not let the stress get you, take you, eat you away internally, right? You got to figure out that, right? Because that's the one that's going to lead you to the depression, which my disease, guess what? It causes depression. Yep. And my medications, guess what that does? Causes depression. So guess what I'm going to be doing? I'm going to be depressed and I'm going to be okay with that, right? But I'm going to navigate that bad boy too, right? But I'm just saying, I feel like when you're talking about looking at it, I've looked at it. Like I've cried the tears, and I will still continue to cry the tears about the reality of, like, for me, the reality of not being there for them. Right. Not really the me, right? But what has come to the forefront for me is starting this platform that becomes my legacy box, right? What's the importance of things? You know what I mean? And how we could possibly look at things. That is how I know that my things that I foresee could be beneficial across the board for people could live on, right? But when we're talking about my kids, if my husband's still living, you know what I mean? Even if my parents were still living, like my sister is still living, the possibility of that brokenheartedness that I see, I watch every day. I don't care how much you hate each other, estranged from each other, there's some emotion, right? Some feeling that is going to fly across my table, right? And at the end of the day, it's really figuring out, whoa, how will I make that better for them? If I can't do anything else for me, right? That's what that is. So it becomes more of like a thought process also for me of if I die of it, will I be a failure? You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of things that you can kind of try to grab onto and run with them if you want to, right? But the reality is the situation is like you're dealt the cards, right? But these cards have a duration. Like this is the reality of it, right? They have a duration. It's how you're going to play in that time period, right? I'm an advocate of this, and I read this wonderful book. I think I shared it the last time, but this living in crescendo, right? So it's like, RT, I don't give a rat's how long you feel you have. You gotta just live in crescendo, right? Get bigger, learn more, do more.
I do the crazy things I do is what I'm telling you. I came up with my explanation.
This is it. Well, see what I'm saying? But the thing about it is people can see you being here and there and wait, she's doing this now and that now and da-da-da. But the reality of the situation is that you're putting the pieces of the puzzle together. They can't see it, right? But you can see it. And that's what you continue to do, just keep living in that all the way to I don't care if the wheels fall off, right? Wheels fall off. But at the end of the day, you're going to set just enough platform for somebody else to pick it up.
Daria,
could be your kids.
Talk about purpose. So we clearly, whatever, everybody has, they find, but I don't know how to explain to you. It's kind of a comforting thought to explain, you and I tease about the ADHD, like I can go, that's everybody else, but I am too, but
yeah.
And then what is that anyways? I love people. I love all people, but really it's that brain creates such greatness. Creativity, right?
Right. I think if you can allow it,
yeah.
I feel like sometimes we put the strongholds on our brains,
We do. We really do.
And but there's fear in it, and I think it's understandable fear. But I think creating moments though is what you can do.
Do you see what I'm even for you? Like, why are you in death care? Like, it's not just because you were in the legacy of your family. Like, why is that in your lineage? Right.
I totally guess.
Right.
I'm so trying to figure it out as well. Because like when I know my dad's pain, right? I know why he started, right? There's a why you started in the first place kind of thing. You know what I mean? And so I know there's an aspect of that, but then there's even when we're talking about ancestry, you know what I mean? And really in reference to how we cared for the dead, and how there is a lot of realization to even how we care for people and others and the reality of being kind of dang good at, but I feel like when we're talking about your purpose, it becomes very specific in reference to the well-rounded aspects of it. I feel like you have to kind of get to a place in life where you can see it all the way through. You know what I mean? That two worlds, if there's two worlds out there clashing, how can you find some alignment? Because if you don't have that, it's not always aligned with your full value systems, your full understanding, you know? And so it's sometimes hard to be able to put life and death in the same room. And what you find, honestly, when you do get in the room, it makes life even more important.
Totally.
It does. I mean, the walk that I've walked, it's like, oh, I'm glad I was a funeral director to see life from this perspective. Not that it desensitizes, though, right? It doesn't at all. I'm like crying at every service, right? Kind of thing. They kind of laugh at me and everything around here because they'll turn to me. They know the moment, like I'm going down, or a song or something. And I think is a little bit of my own mortality in that additionally the knowing that you've rested on sometimes a word or understanding or a song kind of allows you to kind of go back and think about how there could be uplift if they could just know, right? um and believing in something, and it's funny because I've always gone back and forth with the thoughts of my daughter. She's like, babe, you're always in the fantasy world. You know what I'm saying? But I'm like, but why not? Right? You know what I'm saying? Like, why not? She is like, kind of just boom, 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 and life is grand. I think when she starts looking at the reality things, that's when she gets aggravated. And I'm realizing, well, that makes sense. you know? But I think the reality of life is also got to be, and then I think that's part of the purpose is it's like this, you can get this head and heart alignment, but if you're not outstretching your arms from there, like it's really going, I don't feel like that's as far as it's supposed to go. You're not just supposed to help self. You know what I mean? It's about getting that all in line so that you can help others. I feel like even when we're talking about organizations to be supportive of, it's ones that you can see that there's a head and heart alignment in tandem, because if you can't see that. Yeah.
We know about things that don't feel right. And I love when you always bring the outstretched arms because, Daria, I've realized, sometimes we wait for this self-care piece but I'm going to tell you right now, it ain't happening. And I feel like servitude, outstretched arms does do that, right? So,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like we've gone to this, like back to the whole mask, like you got to put your mask on first. I get it, but then part of me is like, you can do this. You can do it one hand and put the other on at the same time. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Right. Well, I think the thing is, it's kind of like being a life coach, right? So life coaches, they're only a couple of steps ahead of who they're coaching most of the time, right? So it only makes sense, right, for you to feel like kind of sucked back into the give back, the suck back into the give back, the suck back into the give back, right? And it feel uplifting in you. Now, when it's downtrodden, right, that's where you got to figure out where the balance is.
And you'll know when you're feeling, it's like
That's
if
it.
we're that intuitive with energy, you and I both know you walk into a room, I know there's certain environment, I'm like, oh, it's heavy in here, right? And then like that
the vibe.
just feel it. And so I say this to you because I think like that's where, maybe not to use the lack of a better word, but sometimes we waste our lives to get to servitude as a senior. And then for the things they want to do, they don't even know where to start because they weren't like, do you get what I'm saying? And then they want to give back.
Totally.
But they're stuck in a vicious cycle. They have these health conditions, they're dealing with transportation, but they want to give, and then their purpose. Right.
That's why I'm so big on the wheel. That's why I'm so big on wellness, and then like people really getting a good understanding of their dimensions, like who the heck am I, right? And filling up on them, because the thing is, as you get older, they will change, they will turn, they will twist. I've been even doing like these little surveys with some of the older adults that I am, surrounded by, and just trying to get an understanding of like what's yours look like, as opposed to the 40-year-old, maybe the 20-year-old, right? My daughters do it as well, and they're like, 17 now, excuse me, and then additionally 8, and it's the perspective as well. But I think it's really important for people to start delving into self, to know you completely, like how you really feel about certain things and what's important, and are you doing possibly all you can when you can control what you can control. You know what I mean? Certain things, like for me, there's certain areas when we're talking about the physical me that is only going to go so far, and I'm good, right? Beating myself up over the head about it, not being that person that I was before, all that stuff, that becomes one of those things where you have to kind of just mentally address, right? But I still do, and she ain't doing, right? She ain't doing breath work. I know that. What? Okay. That's all I know. She ain't doing chair yoga. Okay. Here's the things. Okay. I can flip the script.
Flip the script. Listen to Flip the Script. Sorry, now I'm just here. So Destination Imagination, which I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to send you the material and get put into, Aliana's school. That after school program I was telling you about, that really should be in the middle of the day, where they literally learn budget. It's project management, Daria. They learn life skills of budgeting, using recycled materials to create, putting on props in a show. Long story short, it should be in the middle of the school day, the way that we think schools should be. I share this with you. The one that the one that was chosen by our group was Flip the Script. And like what we're talking about here is flipping the script. I would love for all of us to think what might be my potential endpoint. So let's just average. I think it might be 65. Okay, right? So I'm going to work a little bit towards 65. I'm turning 44. Where could I just say, what do I have in place? I still, even though I have a will, I know that there have been some changes. I need to get that aligned, right? I'm just
not to mention the will is not going to go too far. You need a trust.
Too far, you need a trust, right? Yes. So trust. Again, establishment of that. Next, have we actually really, really calculated the cost of college and dividing it? What, you know what I'm saying? And then really budgeting. So all of these questions that come up when
we know how you're voting. No, I'm just kidding.
What about college loans? Like,
yeah, I know.
I say to Vishal, I'm like, how do people do this stuff where they're
$5,000
trips? And he said, Arthi, people are on credit card. And I said, ew. Well, I always grew up, you don't like to owe anybody money, and
cash out of pocket. My mother never had a credit card, didn't even have a debit card. I know those things where times are changing.
Yes, but do we really want to live in? So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm asking us to flip the script a little bit and say it's not a bad, like you and I talk a lot about not looking at the morbidity of death. Like, of course we get emotional, but that could be said. We get emotional at birth too. Did you not cry your tears out when you had your children?
This is true.
If I adopt, would we not cry? Do we not cry at graduation? Do we not cry at all of life's moments? Do we not cry when we are literally flown and grown, when they drop off of children to college, or when they start a new job, when they get married? Tears, every one of these is a bipolar moment. And celebration of lives are also a bipolar moment, because I feel like people who have the celebration of life / funeral, right?
Yep.
Oh, John's gonna come join us on this conversation, huh?
All right. Yeah. Okay, come on in.
Yes,
Let's see
so
what he's got to say.
yeah, I'm sure he has a lot to say.
You know he does. Oh, is he coming? Just saying. Trying to be good beforehand.
Oh yeah, I know, right? But Daria, why are we so critical when every other life event has the bipolar of sad and happy at the same time? Why are we so critical of this
I
moment?
know. Well, I mean, it's just a hard reality in general, to be honest with you. Hard because there's no, like I said, there's no comparison, no putting it into category. And there he is.
Hi, John.
What is he doing?
Hello.
Stop moving.
I'm still. Hold on. Let me move one more time. Oh, no, that's too sunny. I'm too dark for over there.
I can't.
Please.
Too much.
Good morning, ladies.
Morning.
I
Good morning.
feel privileged to be surrounded by such big brains and great beauty.
Oh, you're so.
Oh gosh, he's really trying to hit mortality there.
So I've been listening, having some problems with the internet,
Oh,
but I've been in the back room, backstage for a while. And one of the things that I heard you guys discussing, Daria had made a reference to the outstretched arms in response to RT's statement about servitude. And when I think about outstretched arms, well, before there, no, when I think about outstretched arms, I think it serves it sends two different messages, two separate messages that could be combined into one message. And the two separate messages that it sends, the first message, it's a universal sign of surrendering, or it's saying, please come help me. Just think about a child. When a child walks to their parent, they stretch their arms out because they want a smaller child. They want to be picked up. They want to be held. They want to feel comforted. They want to know that they are loved. So that's a sign that a child gives to a parent, that I'm surrendering to you, that I recognize who you are in my life. And so I'm stretching my arms out to you because I want you to help me, hold me, love me, pick me up. And that's the same symbolic motion that most people use in their spiritual life. Say Christians, for instance, they're always saying, lift your hands in praise. And that's a surrendering to their higher authority. And then when you outstretch your hands, also it's a motion to give assistance or help. And so you can combine those two and say, not only am I in a place where I can help you, but I'm also looking for what and how you can help me at the same time. So let's work this together. And that's where Daria said, getting all of this in line first with your personal, so that you are then able to help someone else. And that goes back into another biblical teaching or principle, I should say, where it says, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and then love yourself or love your neighbors as you love yourself. Mm-hmm. So you first have to start with loving yourself so that you're able to show love to someone else. Because if you don't know what love is for yourself, and you don't know how to receive love, especially from yourself, then you're not going to know how to extend love from you to others. And so once you get this in order from surrendering, then you can extend it out as a help. And so it's a universal motion that is able to help and help yourself as well as helping others. And I am aware that the conversation is about mortality and thinking about our own mortality. And why do we think about our mortality? And what do we think about our mortality? And it could be a dark conversation. I didn't hear the whole beginning because I was battling with the internet. And so when it came in, it seemed a little lighter on the conversation. But when I think about mortality, my own, um, I don't think of it as dark. I think of it as motivation. And I think part of that has to do with my not my background. I guess so. My history, my life history, how I grew up, where I grew up, and the things I've witnessed and experienced in life. So I kind of have been thinking about my mortality personally. I've been thinking about my mortality from a young age. I grew up inner city. Um, I grew up through. I lived through the crack epidemic. I lived through um, the serious growth of street and gang activity and violence. And I grew up seeing a lot of friends lose their lives early in life. Um, I believe as early as 15, 14, 15 was the first time that someone that was close to me in the same peer group as me lost their life to street violence. And when you're so young, and also at that in that same period of time, um, there were reports that a large percentage of my peer group would not make it to 18, and then it switched and would not make it to 21. Here I am in my mid 50s and loving it. And that entire period, I had to think about my mortality every day that I went outside because you did not have to be part of the activity that was going on in the streets to be a victim of the streets. As we know, there's a lot of innocent victims, and there has always been a lot of innocent victims. And so when you live around that, it kind of forces you to think of your mortality. And so one of the ways that myself and people within my social group, one of the things we would do and say to kind of make that thought process not as dark and not as scary and depressing as it could be was, you know what? We woke up today. Today is a day to live it to the fullest.
Yeah.
Right.
Because when you close your eyes, you're not sure what's going to happen if you're going to wake up the next morning. And when you open your eyes, if you open your eyes, you're not sure how long they're going to remain open. And so you have to live that time that has been blessed, that you've been blessed with or given to you, to live it to its fullest. Now, does that say go out and just be reckless? And
Right. That's what I was going to ask you. Right.
and risk the time that you have with your eyes open and air in your lungs and the activity of your limbs and the sound thinking? No, that's not what that means. That means figure out what it is that drives you, what it is that you're passionate about. And I think that's where you kind of find your purpose.
Totally.
Because if it drives you, it motivates you and it pushes you. And then if you have passion, if it comes from your heart, if it really affects your heart, then you have your purpose. And I agree with you, Daria, when you said, or was it you, Marty? Maybe it was of both.
I'll take it. Sorry.
I agree 100% where you say that purpose of the 20-year-old in your 20s, that purpose can change in your 40s, and that purpose can change in your 60s. And I agree with that and I agree because I believe that purpose again can be decided by your interests, your experiences, and just your thought process. And so if it drives you, if it motivates you, and you're passionate about it, that could be one of your purposes in that time, in that moment. And
Right.
you have to take a pause for that moment, to
Yeah.
Say it
recognize
again. A what?
you take a pause to recognize that. You pause in that moment to try to recognize the word that I'm really not
He's not a
a
fan of.
fan of in certain circumstances. But yeah, so because I tell people a lot of times, if you want to find success in something, and this is what I'm learning. It's not that I'm a aficionado in this. I'm learning it and I'm seeing success. But if you want to be successful in something, there's two areas. Where's the camera? There's two areas, and those two areas are, it's either something you strongly are passionate about that you love, and you can't get enough of it, or something that you strongly despise and you want to fix it,
Mhm.
because they both are built from passion. There's a passion to fix something that's wrong, so that it's driving you, you're motivated, and that becomes your purpose. And then once you fix that thing, if you fix that thing, there's no more, it's not that the passion for it is gone, it's just that now you can focus and find the drive to do something else and become passionate about something else, and that then can become your new purpose.
Hey, see,
Yeah,
John,
that's it.
is basically saying it's that ADHD brain that kind of, we're saying that it's okay, folks, to be, and purposes. Maybe it's the idea plural, right, for our lifetime that we have, but the constant remains, again, some type of faith principle. We always come back to this in every conversation. A
Don't
faith
we?
principle, right, of some type, and then, um, and then, what is motivation? Motivation comes through having something that drives and fuels us, which then comes through those outstretched, just that service that we keep coming back to.
Right. So taking the time to actually get in connection with it.
Absolutely.
What
Absolutely.
motivates you at the end of the day, to keep on living with that
To-
crescendo.
Totally. And Daria, I'm glad you said that word, the crescendo, again. You brought up that book because, like I said to you, this is not. I know we look at this topic and we think more like it's just morbid, but it's really not, because if it, like John has just mentioned the last few minutes, that purposeful living, then it drives you to just be eyes open. I love when you said eyes open. You live life with eyes open. Most of us are living life closed, right? When we don't even admire the sun's rays, or when we're driving, we feel those rays. You look at the sky and the horizon line. But if you look at it that way,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Yeah, but to also admit that it's easier said than done,
Oh,
and
definitely.
so
Totally.
the work in, and
You have
so
to
I
be
think that's what
intentional.
it's about.
You
Right,
have,
intentional.
you have to be intentional. If
Yeah.
you
Look,
have
he's
to
using
be,
all my favorite words today.
He is using all
I mean, I have the privilege of being able to sit, lay, eat, and work next to a really intelligent, intellectual, deep thinking person, human, in the form of Daria Williams Fernandez. And
Thanks,
I,
babe.
I pull up a lot of the things that she said to me. It just comes out from the back of my subconscious, and so that she knows that it's floating around in this big head, and it comes out when necessary. And so I would say that mortality is nothing to be afraid of. I think that we need to, and again, like I said, I started thinking about my own mortality early in life, but as I've gotten older, I think of it on a different level. See, before I was thinking of it out of the things that was happening around me, and sort of a little bit of fear, like, man, am I, so I got to make sure that today, if I get today, I'm gonna do this X, Y, and Z. But now it's more of, there's a mission, and I hear a lot of older people say this, and I really don't like. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I understand it. They say, I have more days behind me than I do ahead of me,
Right.
and for me, I want to have as much ahead of me as I do behind me, but just in case I don't, I'm gonna make today be the best day that it could be. And so, for instance, I went to pick my girls up some lunch, our daughters from lunch at Panera Bread. This lady, I went to look at the menu. The lady walked in and started ordering stuff, and the cashier was like, "Oh, I'm not finished." And so I said, "What are you getting, ma'am?" She said, "Oh, I was just gonna get a coffee." I said, "Put a coffee on my order for her." And
Right.
so when I did that, she looked at me, little older white woman. She looked at me, kind of surprised. She said, "Oh my God, you're so nice. God bless you. You didn't have to do that." I said, "No problem. I'm here. You look like you're in a rush. Give her the cup she wants. Let her, go on it. I'm good." And so that made somebody's day. And it was an intentional act to try to make somebody's day and have a different thought process about this black dude standing in front of them, kind of towering over her, and all of the negative
Hearing her mortality. No, I'm just kidding. No.
to try to help change someone
Stop
else's
it.
thought process about
Yeah, exactly.
interacting with black men. And
I
so
agree. I
it was
agree. I'm glad you did.
intentional, but it was also something that was done from my heart sporadically, and it just came from the spirit of just living and enjoying life.
Totally. We all were at time, but of course we can always talk for hours.
You
I
know this.
I know. I think John summed it up beautifully with the with with just that precious time. All right, you all. Have a wonderful week ahead.
You
You
too. We'll see you next week.
signing off.